Hello, everyone. Good evening, and welcome to our live stream where we get to learn and grow together. Welcome to my live stream, Author Liza, where you get to learn how to get better so you can live better. Greetings, everyone, and mega loud shout out to all of you. Thank you all so much for the 5 million in the house watching with us live right now, and for the 20 thumbs up that you have given to this live stream so far. Once again, thank you so much and welcome as I read to you another learning and wisdom filled chapter of this book, The Magic of Thinking Big, Chapter 4. No, it should be Chapter 5. Yes, yesterday we have read Chapter 4 titled How to Think Big. That was our reading topic yesterday, and today in this live stream we'll be reading Chapter 5, How to Think and Dream Creatively. How to Think and Dream Creatively. That's our chapter 5. And before we start, I'd like to offer you this song.
Through a lot of days, some things are not the same as they were a year ago. But all will be okay. I move on each and every day. The past is where it stays, way back a year ago. I've changed for the better this time. I thought I would never be fine. I strive just to say I'm alright. And for the first time in a long time, I'm alright. I've seen a lot of change, been through a lot of pain. Some things are not the same as they were a year ago. But all will be okay. I move on each and every day. The past is where it stays, way back a year ago. I'll push on my chips and call Allen. I'll bet on myself, you keep stalling. I hear destiny and it's calling. I'll keep my head up high through the downs and lows. And where I'm going like still nobody knows. But I'ma choose what's right and take what comes and goes. And ain't no one in life holding me back no more. I've seen a lot of change, been through a lot of pain. Some things are not the same as they were a year ago. But all will be okay. I move on each and every day. The past is where it stays, way back a year ago.
Once again, my dear friends, welcome, welcome, welcome to our live streaming. And I hope you enjoy listening and learning and, of course, growing as I read to you chapter 5 of this book, The Magic of Thinking Big by David Schwartz, Ph.D. So, yesterday I've read to you chapter 4 titled How to Think Big. And tonight I will be reading to you the fifth chapter with the title How to Think and Dream Creatively. And so, without much ado, let's begin. The Magic of Thinking Big, Chapter 5 How to Think and Dream Creatively. First, let's clear up a common fallacy about the meaning of creative thinking. For some illogical reason, science, engineering, art, and writing got tabbed as about the only truly creative pursuits. Most people associate creative thinking with things like the discovery of electricity or polio vaccine, or the writing of a novel or the development of color television. Certainly, these accomplishments are evidence of creative thinking. Each forward step made in the conquest of space is a result of creative thinking. Lots of it. But creative thinking is not reserved for certain occupations, not also restricted to super intelligent people. Well, then, what is creative thinking? A low income family devises a plan to send their son to a leading university. That's creative thinking. A family turns the street's most undesirable lot into the neighborhood beauty spot. That's creative thinking. A minister develops a plan that doubles his Sunday evening attendance. That's creative thinking. Figuring out ways to simplify record keeping, selling the impossible customer, keeping the children occupied constructively, making employees really like their work, or preventing a certain quarrel. All these are examples of practical, everyday creative thinking. Creative thinking is simply finding new, improved ways to do anything. Let me type that. And by the way, let me type the chapter 5 title of this book, The Magic of Thinking Big. Let's spin that message. So that's the title of chapter 5, How to Think and Dream Creatively. And so let me type that quote, the definition of creative thinking. Before we continue, let's play some music first. Let's continue with the reading. So that's the definition of creative thinking according to the author David Schwartz. Creative thinking is simply finding new, improved ways to do anything. The rewards of all types of success at home, at work, in the community, hinge on finding ways to do things better. Now, let's see what we can do to develop and strengthen our creative thinking ability. Step 1: believe it can be done. Here's the basic truth: to do anything, we must first believe it can be done. Believing something can be done sets the mind in motion to find a way to do it. To illustrate this point of creative thinking in training sessions, I often use this example. I asked the group, how many of you feel it is possible to eliminate jails within the next 30 years? Invariably, the group looks bewildered, not quite sure they heard the right thing, and thinking they are listening to a real fuzzy wuzzy. So, after a pause, I repeat, how many of you feel it is possible to eliminate jails within the next 30 years? Once they're sure I'm not joking, someone always blasts me with something like, you mean to say you want to turn all those murderers, thieves, and rapists loose? Don't you realize what this would mean? Why, none of us would be safe. We have to have jails. The others cut loose. All order would break down if we didn't have jails. Some people are born criminals. If anything, we need more jails. Did you read in the morning's paper about that murder? And the group goes on telling me all sorts of good reasons why we must have jails. One fellow even suggested we've got to have jails so the police and prison guards can have jobs. About 10 minutes of letting the group prove why they can't eliminate the need for jails, I say to them, now, let me mention here that this question of eliminating jails is used to make a point. Each of you has come up with the reasons why we can't eliminate the need for jails. Will you do me a favor? Will you try extra hard for a few minutes to believe we can eliminate jails? Joining in this experiment of Joining in the spirit of the experiment, the group says in effect, oh well, but just for kicks. Then I asked, now, assuming we can eliminate jails, how could we begin? Suggestions come slowly at first. Someone hesitantly says something like, well, you might cut down crime if you established more youth centers. Before long, the group, which 10 minutes ago was solidly against the idea, now begins to work up real enthusiasm. Work to eliminate poverty. Most crime stems from the low income levels. conduct a research to spot potential criminals before they commit a crime, develop surgical procedures to cure some kinds of criminals, educate law enforcement personnel in positive methods of reform. These are just examples of the 78 specific ideas I've tabulated that could help accomplish the goal of eliminating jails. When you believe, your mind finds ways to do. Let me type that, and this is something that we could also remember whenever we come up or meet something a bit difficult for us to accomplish. So, what we need to do first is to believe. So, there. That's another profound statement from this book, The Magic of Thinking Big. When you believe, your mind finds ways to do. And that's very basic. And before we continue, let's play some music for 2 minutes.
Seen a lot of change, been through a lot of pain. Some things are not the same as they were a year ago. But I'll be okay. I move on each and every day. The past is where it stays, way back a year ago. I've changed for the better this time. I thought I would never be fine. I strive just to say I'm alright. And for the first time in a long time, I'm alright. I've seen a lot of change, been through a lot of pain. Some things are not the same as they were a year ago. But I'll be okay. I move on each and every day. The past is where it stays, way back a year ago. I ain't coming back, I'm not falling. I'll push all my chips and call Allen. I'll bet on myself, you keep stalling. I'll hear destiny and it's calling. I'll keep my head up high through the downs and lows and where I'm going like. Still nobody knows what I'ma choose to try and take a punch.
And also, I would like to greet the 5 million in the house watching with us live right now. Those who are in the PG, Ma'am Henupa, thank you so much for still being here. Tita Wanderies. And those who are also watching the replay later on, thank you all so much for tuning in. And I hope you still enjoy listening as I continue reading to you this exciting chapter with the title How to Think and Dream Creatively. Let's continue with the reading. This experiment has just one point. When you believe something is possible, your mind goes to work for you to prove why. But when you really believe something can be done, your mind goes to work for you and helps you find the ways to do it. When you believe, your mind finds ways to do. Believing something can be done paves the way for creative solutions. Believing something can't be done is destructive thinking. This point applies to all situations, little and big. The political leaders who do not genuinely believe permanent world peace can be established will fail because their minds are closed to creative ways to bring about peace. The economists The economists who believe business depressions are inevitable will not develop creative ways to beat the business cycle. In similar fashion, you can find ways to like a person if you believe you can. You can discover solutions to personal problems if you believe you can. You can find ways to purchase that new, larger home if you believe you can. Believing creates creative powers. Disbelief, put the brakes on. Believe, and you'll start thinking constructively. Your mind will create a way if you let it. A little over 2 years ago, a young man asked me to help him find a job with more future. He was employed as a clerk in the credit department of a mailing order company and felt that he was getting nowhere. We talked about his past record and what he wanted to do. After knowing something about him, I asked, I admire you very much for wanting to move up the ladder to a better job and more responsibility. But getting a start in that kind of job you want requires a college degree these days. I noticed you haven't finished, or I've noticed you finished 3 semesters. May I suggest you finish college? Going summers, you can do it in 2 years. Then, I'm sure you can land the job you want with the company you want to work for. I realize, he answered, that a college education would help, but it's impossible for me to get back to school. Impossible? Why? I asked. Well, for one thing, he began, I'm 24. On top of that, my wife and I are expecting our second child in a couple of months. We barely get by now on what I make. I wouldn't have time to study since I'd have to keep my job. It's just impossible, that's all. This young man had himself convinced that finishing college was impossible. Then I said to him, if you believe it is impossible to finish school, then it is. But by the same token, if you'll just believe it is possible to return to the university, a solution will come. Now, here's what I would like you to do. Make up your mind you are going back to school. Let that one thought dominate your thinking. Then really think about how you can do and still support your family. Come back in a couple of weeks and let me know what ideas you've come up with. My young friend returned 2 weeks later. A lot of thoughts came about what you said, he began. I decided I must go back to school. I haven't figured out all the 8 angles yet, but I'll find a solution. And he did. He managed to get a scholarship provided by the trade association, which paid his tuition, books, and incidentals. He rearranged his work schedule so he could attend classes. His enthusiasm and promise of a better life won him his wife's full support. Together, they creatively found ways to budget money and time more effectively. Last month, he received his degree one day and went to work the next as a management trainee for a large corporation. Where there's a will, there's a way. Let me type that. This is actually one of the cliches, but I think it's an enduring truth. Where there's a will, wait, where there's a will, there's a way. And that's profound. We always hear about it, but basically, the first step to be able to do it, to find a way, is for us to really believe that it can be done. First, start believing it's possible, then be really convinced that it can be done. And then the mind will start to find solutions about it. So, there, let's continue. Believe it can be done. That's basic to creative thinking. Here are suggestions to help you develop creative power through belief. Number one, eliminate the word impossible from your thinking and speaking vocabulary. Impossible is a failure word. The thought it's possible sets off a chain reaction of other thoughts to prove you're right. Number two, think of something special you've been wanting to do but felt you couldn't. Now, make a list of reasons why you can do it. Many of us whip and defeat our desires simply because we concentrate on why we can't, when the only thing worthy of our mental concentration is why we can. Recently, I read a newspaper item that said there are too many countries in most states, counties in most states. The article pointed out that most county boundaries were established decades before the first automobile was built and while the horse and buggy was the chief mode of travel. But today, with fast automobiles and good roads, there is no reason why three or four counties could not be combined. This would cut down greatly on duplicated services so that taxpayers would actually get better service for less money. The writer of this article said he thought he had stumbled across a really live idea, so he interviewed 30 people at random to get their reaction. The result? Not one person thought the idea had merit, even though it would provide them with better local government at less cost. That's an example of traditional thinking. The traditional thinker's mind is paralyzed. His reason? It's been this way for 100 years, therefore it must be good and must stay this way. Why risk a change? Average people have always resented progress. Many voiced a great protest toward the automobile on the grounds that nature meant for us to walk or use horses. The airplane seemed drastic to many. Man had no right to enter the province reserved for birds. A lot of the status quoers still exist that man has no business in space. One top missile expert recently gave an answer to this kind of thinking. Man belongs, says Dr. von Braun, where man wants to go. Around 1900s, a sales executive discovered a scientific principle of sales management. It received a lot of publicity and even found its way into textbooks. This principle was this: there is one best way to sell a product. Find the best way, then never deviate from it. Fortunately, for this man's company, new leadership came in and in time to save the company from financial ruin. Contrast that experience with the philosophy of Crawford H. Greenwald, president of one of the nation's largest business organization, E.I. DuPont Nemours. In a talk at Columbia University, Mr. Greenwald said that there are many ways in which a good job can be done. As many ways, in fact, as there are men to whom the task is given. In truth, there is no one best way to do anything. There is no one best way to decorate an apartment, landscape a lawn, make a sail, rear a child, or cook a steak. There are as many best ways as there are creative minds. Nothing grows in ice. If we let tradition freeze our minds, new ideas can't sprout. Make this test sometime soon. Propose one of the ideas below to someone and then watch his behavior. Number one, the postal system, long a government monopoly, should be turned over to private enterprise. Number two, presidential elections should be held every 2 years, 2 or 6 years instead of four. Number three, regular hours for retail stores should be at 1 p.m. to 8 p.m. instead of 9 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. Number four, the retirement age should be raised to 70. Whether these ideas are sound or practical is not the point. What is significant is how a person handles propositions like these, I should say. If he laughs at the idea and doesn't give it a second thought, and probably 95% will laugh at it, chances are he suffers from tradition paralysis. But the one in 20 who says, "That's an interesting idea, tell me more about it," has a mind that's turned into creativity. Traditional thinking is personal enemy number one for the person who is interested in the Creative Personal Success Program. Traditional thinking freezes the mind, blocks your progress, and prevents you from developing creative power. Here are three ways to fight it. So, three ways to fight traditional thinking that freezes your mind. So, three ways. Number one, become receptive to ideas. Welcome new ideas. Destroy these thoughts repellents like won't work, can't be done, it's useless, and it's stupid. A very successful friend of mine who holds a major position in an insurance company said to me, "I don't pretend to be the smartest guy in the business, but I think I am the best sponge in the insurance industry. I made it I make it a point to soak up all the good ideas I can." Number two, be an experimental person. Break up the fixed routines. Expose yourself to new restaurants, new books, and new theaters, new friends. Take a different route to work someday. Take a different vacation this year. Do something new and different this weekend. So that's number two. If your work is in distribution, develop an interest in production, accounting, finance, and the other elements of the business. This gives you breadth and prepares you for larger responsibilities. Number three, be progressive, not regressive. Not, "That's the way we did it where I used to work, so we ought to do it here that way." But, "How can we do it better than we did it where I used to work?" Not backward regressive thinking, but forward progressive thinking. Because you've got up at 5:30 a.m. to deliver papers or milk cows when you were a youngster doesn't necessarily mean it's a good idea for you to require your children to do the same. Imagine what would happen if the Ford Motor Company that management allowed whose management allowed itself to think, "This year we've built the ultimate in automobiles. Further improvement is impossible. Therefore, all experimental engineering and designing activities are hereby permanently terminated." Even the mammoth Ford Motor Company would shrivel fast with this attitude. Let's pause for a while and play some music. And I'd like to greet the 6 million in the house. Mega, mega loud shout out. Thank you all so much for being here. Let's continue playing. A year ago, I found this music enlivening from the audio library of YouTube Studio.
I've seen a lot of change, been through a lot of pain. Things are not the same as they were a year ago. But I'll be okay. I move on each and every day. The past is where it stays. Way back a year ago. I've changed for the better this time. I thought I would never be fine. I strive just to say I'm alright. And for the first time in a long time, I'm alright. I've seen a lot of change, been through a lot of pain. Some things are not the same as they were a year ago. But I'll be okay. I move on each and every day. The past is where it stays. Way back a year ago. Coming back, I'm not falling. I'll push all my chips and call all in. I'll bet on myself, you keep stalling. I hear destiny and it's calling. I'll keep my head up high through the downs and lows and where I'm going like. Still nobody knows, but I'ma choose to try and take the comes and goes. And ain't no one in life holding me back no more. I've seen a lot of change, been through a lot of pain. Some things are not the same as they were a year ago. But I'll be okay. I move on each and every day. The past is where it stays. Way back a year ago. Way back a year ago. I've been dreaming on in my head like I've seen it. A life worth living is a life worth leading. I'm doing what I love till my heart stops beating. I'm feeling this demon. Gotta taste it, I'm wasting this in my face. Work a job every day till your dreams fade away. Like your God never changed, play the game that we say. I need a break. Time stands strong, need to move on to be what I want. I'll keep dreaming on. Time stands strong, need to move on to be what I want. I'll keep dreaming chase like that, yeah, I play so strong every night in the back of a swing home run like a baseball bat. Gonna see me rise and hate on that, and I'll play both sides, you need no care, but I'm around good.
There, and let's continue with our reading. Let's see how we can go about it. There. I haven't worn any makeup for now. That's why. Sub the bigger one. There. Okay. Pakita daw ako para hindi mysterious ang dating. Thank you, Tita Wanderings. Thank you so much. And let's continue with our reading. Successful people, like successful businesses, live with these questions. How can I improve the quality of my performance? How can I do better? And just like me as an author, my question is, how can you become better? Absolute perfection in all human undertakings, from building missiles to rearing children, is unattainable. This means that there is endless room for improvement. Successful people know this, and they are always searching for a better way. Note, the successful person doesn't ask, can I do it better? He knows he can. So he phrases the question, how can I do it better? A few months ago, a former student of mine in business for just a few 4 years opened her fourth hardware store. This was quite a feat, considering the young lady's small initial capital investment of $3,500, strong competition from other stores, and relatively short time she had been in business. I visited her new store shortly before or after it opened to congratulate her on the fine progress she had made. In an indirect way, I asked her how she was able to make a success of three stores and open a fourth one when most merchants had to struggle to make success of just one store. Naturally, she answered, I worked hard, but just getting up early and working late isn't responsible for the four stores. Most people in my business work hard. The main thing I attribute my success is my self styled weekly improvement program. A weekly improvement program? Sounds impressive. How does it work? I asked. Well, it really isn't anything elaborate, she continued. It's just a plan to help me do a better job as it as each week rolls around. To keep my mind forward thinking on the track, I divided my job into four elements: customers, employees, merchandise, and promotion. All during the week, I make notes and jot down ideas as to how I can improve my business. Then, every Monday evening, I set aside 4 hours to review the ideas I've jotted down and figure out how to put the solid ones use in the business. In this 4 hour period, I forced myself to take a hard look at my operation. I don't simply wish more customers would stop and shop in my store. Instead, I asked myself, what can I do to attract more customers? How can I develop regular loyal customers? She went on describing numerous little innovations that made her first three stores to success. Things like the way she arranged the merchandise within her stores, her suggestion selling technique that sold two out of three customers merchandise they had not planned to buy when they entered her stores, the credit plan she devised when many of her customers were out of work because of a strike, the contest she developed that boosted sales during a Slack session. I asked myself, what can I do to improve my merchandise offerings? And I get ideas. Let me cite just one case. 4 weeks ago, it occurred to me that I should do something to get more youngsters into the store. I reasoned, if I had something here to draw the kids to the store, I also draw more of the parents. I kept thinking about it. Then this idea came. Put in a line of small carded toys for children on the 4th to 8th age bracket. It's working. The toys take little space and I make nice profit on them. But most importantly, the toys have increased the store traffic. Believe me, she went on, my weekly improvement plan works. Just by conscientiously asking myself, how can I do a better job? I find answers. It's a rare Monday night that I don't come up with some plan or technique that makes the profit and loss statement look better. And I've learned something else about successful merchandising, something that I think every person getting into business for himself should know. What's that? I asked. Just this. It isn't so much what you know when you start that matters. It's what you learn and put to use after you open your doors that counts most. Big success calls for persons who continually set higher standards for themselves and others. Persons who are searching for the ways to increase efficiency, to get more output at lower cost, to do more with less effort. Top success is reserved for the I can do it better kind of person. General Electric uses the slogan, progress is the most important product. Why not make progress your important product? The I can do better philosophy works magic. When you ask yourself, how can I do better? Your creative power is switched on and ways for doing things better suggests themselves. Here's a daily exercise that will help you discover and develop the power of the I can do better attitude. Each day before you begin to work, devote 10 minutes to thinking, how can I do a better job today? Ask, what can I do today to encourage my employees? What special favor can I do for my customers? How can I increase in my personal efficiency? This exercise is simple, but it works. Try it, and you'll find unlimited creative ways to win greater success. Just about every time my wife and I would get together with a certain couple, the conversation would turn to working wives. Mrs. S had worked several years before her marriage, and she genuinely liked it. But now she'd say, I've got two youngsters in school, a home to manage, and meals to prepare. I simply haven't got time. Then, one Sunday evening, Mr. and Mrs. S and their children were in an automobile accident. Mrs. S and the youngsters escaped serious injury, but Mr. S received a back injury that left him permanently disabled. Now, Mrs. S had no choice but to go to work. When we saw her several months after the accident, we were amazed to find how well she had adjusted to her new responsibilities. You know, she said, 6 months ago, I'd never dreamed I could possibly manage a house and work full time. But after the accident, I just made up my mind that I had to find time. Believe me, my efficiency has gone up 100%. I discovered a lot of things that I was doing that was that needed, that didn't need to be done at all, I should say. Then I discovered that the children could and wanted to help. There, I think that's better. Where's that? Ah, there. Then I discovered that the children could and wanted to help. I found dozens of ways to conserve time. Fewer trips to the store, less TV, less telephoning, less of those time killers. This experience teaches us a lesson. Capacity is a state of mind. How much we do, how much we can do depends on how much we think we can do. Let me read, let me move to the next slide. there. When you really believe you can do more, your mind thinks creatively and shows you the way. A young bank executive related this personal experience about work capacity. One of the other executives in our bank left us with very short notice. This put our department on the spot. The fellow leaving had filled an important job, and his work couldn't be postponed or left undone. The day after he left, the vice president in charge of my department called me in. He explained to me that he had already talked individually to two others in my group, asking them if they could divide the work of the man who had just left until a replacement could be found. Neither of them flatly refused, said the vice president, but each stated that he is up to his neck now and with his own pressing work. I'm wondering if you could handle some of the overload temporarily. Throughout my working career, I've learned that it never pays to turn down what looks like an opportunity. So I agreed and promised to do my best to handle all the vacated job as well as keep up with my own work. The vice president was pleased at this. I walked out his office knowing I had taken on the big job. I was just as busy as the other two in my department who had wiggled out of this extra duty, but I was determined to find a way to handle both jobs. I finished up my work in the afternoon, and when the offices were closed, I sat down to figure out how I could increase my personal efficiency. I got a pencil and started writing down every idea I could think of. And I came up with some good ones, like working out an arrangement with my secretary to channel all routine telephone calls to me during certain hour each day, placing all outgoing calls during a certain hour, cutting my usual conference periods from 15 minutes to 10, giving all my dictation at one time each day. I also discovered my secretary could and was eager to take over a number of little time consuming details for me. I had been handling my present job for over 2 years, and frankly, I was amazed to discover how much inefficiency I had let creep in. Within a week's time, I was dictating twice as many letters, handling 50% more phone calls, attending half again as many meetings with no strain. A couple more weeks passed. The vice president called me in. He complimented me for doing a fine job. He went on to say that he had looked over a number of people from both inside and outside the bank, but he had not found yet the right man. Then he confessed that he had already cleared with the bank's executive committee and that they had authorized him to combine the two jobs, put them both in my charge, and give me a substantial increase in salary. I proved myself that how much I can do depends on how much I think I can do. I repeat, how much I can do depends on how much I think I can do. That's profound. Capacity is indeed a state of mind. Every day, it seems this takes place in a fast moving world of business. The boss calls in an employee and explains that a special task must be accomplished. Then he says, I know you've got a lot of work to do, but you can handle this. But can you handle these? Too often, the employee replies, I'm awfully sorry, but I'm in all loaded down now. I wish I could take it on, but I'm just too busy. Under the circumstances, the boss doesn't hold it against the employee because it is an extra duty, so to speak. But the boss realizes the task must be done, and so he'll keep looking until he finds an employee who is just as busy as the rest but who feels he can take on more. And this employee is the fellow who will forge ahead. In business, in the home, in the community, the success combination is do what you do better, improve the quality of your output, and do more of what you do, increase the quantity of your output. Convinced it pays to do more and better? Then try this two-step procedure. Number one, eagerly accept the opportunity to do more. It's a compliment to be asked to take on new responsibility. Accepting greater responsibility on the job makes you stand out and shows that you are more valuable. When your neighbors ask you to represent them on a civic matter, accept. It helps you to become a community leader. Next, concentrate on how can I do more? Creative answers will come. Some of these answers may be better planning and organization of your present work, or taking intelligent shortcuts in your routine activities, or possibly dropping non essential activities altogether. But let me repeat, the solution for doing more will appear. As a personal policy, I've accepted fully the concept if you want it done, give it to a busy man. I refuse to work on important projects with persons who had lots of free time. I have learned from a painful, expensive experience that a fellow who has plenty of time makes an ineffective work partner. All the successful, competent people I know are busy. When I start some project with them, I know it will be satisfactorily completed. I have learned in dozens of instances that I can count on a busy man to deliver. But I have often been disappointed in working with people who have all the time in the world. Progressive business management constantly asks, what can we do to expand output? Why not ask yourself, what can I do to expand my output? Your mind will creatively show you how. In hundreds of interviews with people at all levels, I've made it discovery. The bigger the person, the more apt he is to encourage you to talk. The smaller the person, the more apt he is to preach to you. Let me repeat. The bigger the person, the more apt he is to encourage you to talk. The smaller the person, the more apt he is to preach to you. Big people monopolize listening. Small people monopolize the talking. Note these also. Top level leaders in all walks of life spend more time requesting advice than they do in giving it. Before a man takes Before a top man makes a decision, he asks, how do you feel about it? What do you recommend? What do you do under these circumstances? How does this sound to you? Look at it this way. A leader is a decision-making human machine. Now, to manufacture anything, you've got to have raw material. In reaching creative decisions, the raw materials are the ideas and suggestions of others. Don't, of course, expect the other person to give it to you ready-made solutions. That's not the primary reason for asking and listening. Ideas of others help you spark your own ideas so your mind is more creative. I recently participated in a staff instructor in an executive management seminar. The seminar consisted of 12 sessions. One of the highlights of each meeting was a 15-minute discussion by one of the top executives on the topic how I solved my most pressing management problem. At the ninth session, the executive whose turn it was, a vice president of a large milk processing company, did something different. Instead of telling us how he solved his problem, he announced this topic as needed help and in solving help on solving my most pressing management problem. He quickly outlined his problem, then asked the group for ideas on solving it. To be sure, he got a record of each idea suggested. He had a stenographer in the room taking down everything that was said. Later, I talked with this man and complimented him on his unique approach. His comment was, there are some very sharp men in this group. I figured I'd harvest some ideas. There's a good possibility something someone said during that session may give me the clue I need to solve the problem. Note, this executive presented his problem, then listened. In so doing, he got some raw decision-making raw material, and as a side benefit, the other executives in the audience enjoyed the discussion because it gave them the opportunity to take part. Successful businesses invest large sums in customer or in consumer research. They ask people about the taste, quality, size, and appearance of a product. Listening to the people provides definite ideas for making the product more saleable. It also suggests to the manufacturer what he should tell consumers about the product in his advertising. The product for developing successful products is to get as much as opinion as you can, listen to people who will buy the product, and then design the product and its promotion to please these people. In an office, I recently noticed a sign that said, to sell John Brown what John Brown buys, you've got to see things through John Brown's eyes. That's a rhyme. Once again, to sell John Brown what John Brown buys, you've got to see things through John Brown's eyes. Your ears are your intake valves. They feed your mind raw materials that can be converted into creative power. We learn nothing from telling, but there's no limit to what we can learn by asking and listening. Try this three-stage program to strengthen your creativity through asking and listening. Number one, encourage others to talk. In personal conversations or in group meetings, draw out people with little urges such as, tell me more about your experience, or what do you think should be done about it? What do you think is the key point? Encourage others to talk, and you win a double barreled victory. Your mind soaks up raw material that you can use to produce creative thought, and you win friends. There is no surer way to get people to like you than to encourage them to talk to you. Number two, test your own views in the form of questions. Let other people help you smooth and polish your ideas. Use the what do you think of this suggestion approach. Don't be dogmatic. Don't announce a fresh idea as if it were handed down on a golden tablet. Do a little informal research first. See how your associates react to it. If you do, chances are you'll end up with a better idea. Number three, concentrate on what the other person says. Listening is more than just keeping your own mouth shut. Listening means letting what's said penetrate your mind. So often, people pretend to listen when they aren't listening at all. They're just waiting for the other person to pause so they can take over with the talking. Concentrate on what the person is saying, evaluate it. That's how you collect mind food. More and more leading universities are offering advanced management training programs for senior business executives. According to the sponsors, the big benefit of these programs is not that the executives get more ready-made formulae that they could use to operate their businesses more efficiently. Rather, they benefit most from the opportunity to exchange and discuss new ideas. Many of these programs required executives to live together in college dormitories, thus encouraging bull sessions. Boiled down to one word, these executives benefit most from the stimulation received. Stimulation. A year ago, I directed two sessions in a one-week sales management school in Atlanta sponsored by the National Sales Executive Incorporated. A few weeks later, I met a salesman friend who worked for one of the sales executives who attended the school. Let's pause for a while and play some music.
as they were a year ago. All be okay.
I like that music. Let's continue. A year ago, I directed two sessions in one-week sales management school in Atlanta, sponsored by the National Sales Executives. A few weeks later, I met a salesman friend who worked for one of the sales executives who'd attended the school. Let's see. You people at the school sure gave my sales management manager a lot of things to do to run our company better, my young friend said. Curious, I asked him specifically what changes he'd noticed. He reeled off a number of things: a revision in the compensation plan, meetings twice a month instead of once a month, new business cards and stationery, a revision in territories, not one of which was specifically recommended in the training program. The sales manager didn't get a bunch of canned techniques. Instead, he got something much more valuable: the stimulation to think of ideas directly beneficial to his own particular organization. A young accountant for for a paint saan na yan? Manufacturer told me about a very special successful venture of his that was sparkled by the ideas of others. I never had more than a casual interest in real estate, he told me. I've been a professional accountant for several years now, and I've stuck pretty close to my profession. One day, a realtor friend invited me to be his guest in the luncheon of one of the city's real estate groups. The speaker that day was an older man who had seen the city grow. His talk was about in the next 20 years. He then proceeded he then predicted that the metropolitan area out would grow far out in the surrounding farmland. He also predicted that there would be a record demand for what he called gentleman-sized farms, 2 to 5 acres, big enough so the businessman or the professional person could have a pool, horses, a garden, and other hobbies that require space. This man's talk really stimulated me. What he described was exactly what I wanted. The next few days, I asked several friends what they thought about the idea of somebody owning a 5 acre estate. Everyone I talked to said, in effect, I'd love that. I continued to think about it and to figure how I could turn it into a profit, the idea into a profit. Then one day, as I was driving to work, the answer came out of nowhere. Where? Why not buy a farm and then divide it into states? I figured the land might be worth more than relatively small pieces than in one big piece. 22 miles from the center of the city, I found a worn out 50-acre farm priced at $8,500. I bought it, paying only one third down and working out a mortgage with the owner for the balance. Next, I planted pine seedlings where there were no trees. I did this because the real estate man whom I feel knows his business told me, people want trees these days. Lots of trees. Then I got a surveyor to divide the 50 acres into 10 5-acre plots. Now, I was ready to start selling. I've got several mailing lists of the young executives in the city and put out a small scale direct mail campaign. I figured out how, for only $3,000, the price of a small city lot, they could buy an estate. I also described the potentials for recreation and wholesome living. In In 6 weeks' times, working only evenings and on weekends, I sold all 10 plots. Total income $30,000. Total costs, including the land, advertising, surveying, and legal expenses, 10,400. Profit, 19,600. I made a nice profit because I let myself be exposed to ideas of other intelligent people. Had I not accepted that invitation to attend a luncheon with a group completely foreign to my occupational interests, my brain would have never worked out the successful plan for making a profit. There are many ways to get a mental stimulation, but here are two that you can incorporate in your pattern of life. First, join and meet regularly with at least one professional group that provides stimulation in your own occupational area. Rub shoulders and minds with other success oriented people. So I often hear someone say, I picked up the great idea this noon at the meeting, or during the meeting yesterday, I got to thinking. Remember, a mind that feeds only on itself soon is undernourished, becoming weak and incapable of creative, progressive thought. Stimulation from others is the excellent mind food. Second, join and participate in at least one group outside your occupational interests. Association with people who have different job interests broaden your thinking and helps you to see the big picture. You'll be surprised how mixing regularly with people outside your occupational area will stimulate your on the job thinking. Ideas are fruits of your thinking, but they've got to be harnessed to put to work to have value. Each year, an oak tree produces enough acorns to populate good-sized forest. forest. Yet from these bushels of seeds, perhaps only one or two acorns will become a tree. The squirrels destroy most of them, and the hard ground beneath the tree doesn't give the few remaining seeds much a chance for a start. So it is with ideas. Very few bear fruit. Ideas are highly perishable. If you are not on guard, the squirrels, negative thinking people, will destroy most of them. Ideas require special handling from the time they are born until they are transformed into practical ways for doing things better. Use these three ways to harness and develop your ideas. Number one, don't let ideas escape. Write them down. Every day, lots of good ideas are born only to die quickly because they aren't nailed to paper. Memory is a weak slave when it comes to preserving or nurturing brand new ideas. Carry a notebook or some small cards with you. When you get an idea, write it down. A friend who travels a lot keeps a clipboard beside him so that he can write down an idea the instant it occurs to him. People with fertile creative minds knows a good idea may sprout anytime, any place. Don't let ideas escape, else you destroy the fruits of your thinking. Fence them in. Number two, review your ideas. File in these ideas in an active file. The file can be an elaborate cabinet or it can be a desk drawer. A shoebox will do. Build a file and then examine your storehouse of ideas regularly. As you go over your ideas, some may, for very good reasons, have no value at all. Get rid of them. But so long as the idea has any promise, keep it. Number three, cultivate and fertilize your idea. Now, make your idea grow. Think about it. Tie the idea to a related ideas. Read anything you can find there is in any way akin to your idea. Investigate all angles. Then, when the time is right, put it to work for yourself, your job, and your future. When an architect gets an idea for a new building, he makes a preliminary drawing. When the creative advertising person gets an idea for a new TV commercial, he puts it into a storyboard form, a series of drawings that suggest what the idea will look like in finished form. Writers with ideas prepare a first draft. Note, Shape up the idea on paper. There are two excellent reasons for this. When the idea takes tangible form, you can literally look at it, see the loopholes, see what it needs in the way of polish. Then two, ideas have been sold to someone. Customers, employees, the boss, friends, fellow club members, investors. Somebody must buy the idea, else it has no value. One summer, I was contracted by two life insurance salesmen. Both wanted to work on my insurance program. Both promised to return with a plan for making the needed changes. The first salesman gave me strictly an oral presentation. He told me in words what I needed, but as soon as I was confused, he brought in taxes, options, social security, all the technical details of insurance programming. Frankly, he lost me and I had to say no. The second salesman used a different approach. He had charted his recommendations. All the details were shown in a diagram form. I could grasp his proposal easily and quickly because I could literally see it. He sold me. Resolve to put your ideas in saleable form. An idea written or in some sort of picture or diagram has many times more selling power than the idea presented only in the oral form. Use these tools and think creatively. Number one, believe it can be done. When you believe something can be done, your mind will find ways to do it. Believing shows Believing a solution paves way to solution. Eliminate impossible, won't work, can't do, no use trying from your thinking and speaking vocabularies. Number two, don't let tradition paralyze your mind. Be receptive to new ideas. Be experimental. Try new approaches. Be progressive in everything you do. Number three, ask yourself daily, how can I do better? There is no limit to self improvement. When you ask yourself, how can I do better? Sound answers will appear. Try it and see. Number four, ask yourself, how can I do more? Capacity is a state of mind. Asking yourself this question puts your mind to work to find intelligent shortcuts. The success combination in business is do what you do better, improve the quality of your output, and do more of what you do. Im- Increase the quantity of your output. So, two phrases. First, improve the quality of your output. Do what you do better. Second, do more of what you do. Increase the quantity of your output. So it means you have to ask yourself how you can become better, how you can improve. And then later on, after improving yourself, your skills, and all the things needed to do the outcome, then you ask yourself how you can do more. So be more to do more. That's according to author Lisa Gay. Actually, I've included that somewhere in my book, Journey to a Better You. So you have to be more to do more. So be more to do more. Number five, practice asking and listening. Ask and listen, and you'll obtain raw material for reaching sound decisions. Remember, big people monopolize the listening. Small people monopolize the talking. Guilty of that? Once again, ask and listen. You'll obtain raw material for reaching sound decisions. Remember, big people monopolize listening. Small people monopolize talking. Number six, finally, stretch your mind. Get stimulated. Associate with people who can help you think of new ideas, new ways of doing things. Mix with people of different occupational and social interests. So, there, my dear friends, the chapter 5 of this book, The Magic of Thinking Big by David J. Schwartz. This book, I'm reading it to you right now. And I've just read to you chapter 5 with the title, How to Think and Dream Creatively. So I hope, my dear friends, you get an idea or two on how you can think and dream creatively. Enjoy thinking big so you can experience the magic of thinking big. Once again, my dear friends, thank you all so much for joining me in tonight's session of learning, listening, and reading together. I hope you learned and applied a thing or two. And remember what I always say, be better so you can live better. Do more so you can be more so you can do more. And believe you can do it. All the best, my dear friends, and I'll see you tomorrow for the chapter 6 of this book, The Magic of Thinking Big. And before we end, let me thank Ma'am Henupa. Thank you so much po for joining and being on the background. Also, Tita Wanderings, and for those who will be watching the replay, thank you so much once again. And always remember to think big so you can experience the magic of thinking big. Again, be better so you can live better. All the best and God bless. Good night.